Hello and welcome to Bear News One-on-One. I'm your host, Alana Cassiano. Today, we're speaking with Dr. Cedric B. Howard, the Vice President for Student Affairs and Enrollment Services here at UNC. Hi Cedric, thank you so much for joining us today.
Alana, how are you? It's my pleasure to join you today.
Oh yay, well I'm glad you're happy to be here. I'm doing well, thank you for asking. So the first thing I want to ask you about is, for people who don't know, can you tell me a bit about what your role is as Vice President of Student Affairs and Enrollment Services?
My role as the Vice President for Student Affairs and Enrollment Services is really to represent the voice of students. Primarily, I'm responsible for most of the student experiences on campus, from admitting students to financial aid, housing, food services, career development. Essentially, my unit is responsible for the overall sense of place and space that our students have at UNC.
Well, it sounds like a very important role, being focused so much on the student experience.
Absolutely.
So what inspired you to go on this career path and take on this role?
Great question. For many individuals who are student affairs professionals, we realize that what we do is a calling. And for me, the call came when I was an undergraduate. And a college president and the vice president of student affairs at the time identified me as someone who could have a career within student affairs as a profession. I'm very fortunate that I answered the call and that many years later, many decades later, I've been in the profession now for 28 years.
Wow.
And so I'm very fortunate that it has been an enjoyable time.
Wow, well that's so wonderful to hear that you've enjoyed this experience and that they seem to see something in you early on that would give you the potential for this career.
Thank you.
So you were hired towards the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. How has your first full year of like a COVID-free year here at UNC been?
Yes, well, I don't think the COVID restrictions were fully over when we entered this year. I think that in most of campus we reopened, but I think from a student perspective, we had a new normal. Students were wondering, was it safe to come out, join clubs, get involved? We had a number of initiatives that began during COVID, such as renovations to the University Center, a couple of additional offices that were launched during the COVID time. So I think this year is really the year where students are beginning to say, hey, what is UNC? What has it become? And where do I see myself fitting in at UNC?
Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. The pandemic impacted every facet of our lives.
Absolutely.
And it makes sense that it would also impact student experiences, of course. So going along with that, have you noticed any kind of big changes in the university ever since the pandemic has ended, going along with like the renovations to the UC and other things like that?
Yeah, I think the most significant change that I have seen is with current students. Just think about that if you were a junior or senior in college now, during your first year, second year, you went into, pandemic mode. And if you're a first year or second year student, the last part of your high school career was virtual. And so what is the student experience? And how do you engage in the student experience? And many campuses, the upper division students tell the younger division students, this is what you do on campus, this is how things occur. In this case, that's, because of the pandemic, that's not occurring with today's college students. So I think the biggest transition that we all have to encounter is it is safe to go back to a level of engagement. It is okay for us to develop a sense of belonging. It's extremely important for us to provide involvement opportunities. And I think, as we begin to do more of those things, campus student life will be enhanced. And we will develop a new set of what is normalized behavior within the student population.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's a very powerful and very important message.
Yeah.
Would you say that was some of the biggest challenges you had to face as far as the pandemic, post-pandemic or during the pandemic? What specific challenges did you feel like you had to face in your role?
I'm going to talk about post-pandemic. in part because during the pandemic I was at another institution, and I was primarily responsible for pandemic response. That was in a different state, and we remained open throughout the pandemic. So we didn't shut down or shut at all. I think post-pandemic, post-COVID, the most significant adjustment that we're seeing is with our students' mental health and well-being. And how do we provide and meet the needs that they're having and expressing to us? In addition, I think there's the desire for us to mitigate any type of effect on insecurity, whether it's food insecurity, housing insecurity. So I think, primarily those are the basic needs that we're having to address as a campus, and some of the most urgent needs that have emanated from the pandemic.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that you bring that up and that your department is focused on addressing that, because I know, even just going to college is a big adjustment for students that can have an impact on, their mental health or their food security. And I can only imagine that the pandemic just exacerbated those kind of concerns.
That's a fair statement.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next thing I want to ask you about is, last time you were here, you discussed how you try to see the university and campus life from a student's perspective. What kind of things have you noticed, have you learned about UNC or the community by being here and being a part of it?
I think the most prominent thing that I've seen is people care about UNC. Students really embrace being part of the community affairs. They're very active, they're very engaged. They're not just activists, they're also advocates. And I think that is something, those are traits that are missed on many campuses. Being here in Colorado, people are very active outdoors. And that's probably been the most significant transition for me, that they're very active with outdoor activities. But I would say that, the difference between last year and this year is that students are really saying, how can I really engage in my campus experience? And they're seeking to find engagement opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And kind of tying into that, the things that kind of makes Colorado distinct from other places.
Yes.
Your career started on the East Coast. Now you attended several universities over there, and you mentioned that you were from Georgia.
Yes.
So what drew you to Colorado and to Greeley and UNC specifically?
Alana, do you see the mountains?
Oh, they're beautiful.
I mean, that is to me, that is Chamber of Commerce selling the Colorado experience. I think really, truly, the thing that drew me to Colorado was UNC. That the moniker of putting students first, once a bear, always a bear, the sense of belonging, connection to care was extremely important for me. And when I visited for my interview, I really felt that they were actually implementing principles and concepts to align with making sure that students feel valued, that the student voice is heard, that they were seen, and that students were celebrated.
Absolutely. Well, I'm happy to hear that you were drawn here and that you found your home here in Colorado. I'm a Colorado native, so yes, I absolutely understand the love of those mountain views.
Oh, absolutely. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Oh, yeah. The next thing I want to ask you about is, what are some things that make UNC a unique place for students, a different place compared to other institutions? Now, what does UNC do that makes it stand out compared to other institutions you've been to?
UNC cares. UNC cares about the student experience. They care about the students. They care about the environment that they seek to educate students in. I think UNC does a tremendous job of providing opportunities to enhance a student's social mobility. I oftentimes say that the hidden jewel of UNC is that it changed the trajectory of many families, with 42% of our students being first-generation college students, and 48% of our students being Pell eligible. The fact that you can have access to a high-quality research institution the size of UNC, who cares about not just giving you access, but making sure you're successful here, that is priceless.
Absolutely. So you would say you feel like UNC is a place that gives opportunities to students who may not otherwise have those opportunities?
And help dreams come through.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's powerful. And
Yes.
that ties into the idea of long-term success. So at your previous university, you were able to complete a 25-year plan in just 6 years.
Oh, yes.
Very impressive.
Yes.
What changes can we expect to see here at UNC, and what does the future of UNC look like?
That was when I had hair. I think I rubbed it out over those 6 academic years. I think we've begun to implement a very robust evaluation of what we have and fill a number of those gaps. I think you're aware, just this last year we opened Starbucks. We've opened 4 new concepts in University Center. Here within the next couple of weeks, we're going to share with students renovations to Toby Kendall and how we're going to activate that portion of campus. So I think there's a lot of positive momentum that is occurring, that we're happening. Over the next year, we're also going to open a basic needs hub so that we're able to coordinate centralized services, not just for our on-campus students, but for our off-campus students as well, to make sure that their needs are being met.
Well, that's exciting to hear. It sounds like there's a lot of big changes on the horizon, a lot of exciting things to look forward to.
Yes, students are keeping me busy.
Well, good, good. So what would you say is your kind of end goal in this position, if you had to identify one? What's the biggest thing you hope to accomplish here at UNC?
I think the most significant impact from my perspective, the role of the Vice President for Student Affairs and Enrollment Services is one that is vision setting. And the end goal for me is to position UNC to be significantly better for the product and the process that we prepare students for and the end product that they're prepared for by the time my career ends here.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's important to recognize that as a division who represents the student voice, that it's imperative for us to prepare our students to be global citizens and to make sure they're successful alums of this institution.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a wonderful goal. So with so much experience under your belt and so much passion for what you do, what have been some of your biggest takeaways, the biggest thing you've learned, and what has this job taught you?
I think the greatest takeaway is always to be patient. I think that another takeaway is always to exercise active listening, because students are going to tell you what their needs are. And I think, in my role of capacity, being an active listener is an extremely important skill and trait to have. I have the joy of seeing students enter, and I also have the joy of seeing them complete their studies. And I'm always enthused and energized by the journey. And so as we are celebrating here in the next couple of months graduation, congratulations to you as you prepare for graduation.
Thank you.
I'm also energized by the next class that will be coming in and making sure they have a similar experience that 4 years after they enter, that they're able to become part of the community of bears.
Well, that's wonderful. That's great to hear. So just to learn a little bit more about you, I know you have a love of golfing.
Yes.
Has this always been something you loved, or was this something you picked up later in life?
Something I picked up later in life. My very first position in this profession out of graduate school was in Utah. And in Utah, either you ski or you play golf. And for me, as someone who was born and raised in the South, skiing was not an option. And so I actually picked up a club for the first time and never put them down. And so golf for me is the way that I center myself. It also gives me the opportunity to balance myself, to get away. The good thing about golf is you can make a lot of missteps, but just that one perfect swing brings you back for the next round. And so that's why I really enjoy the sport of golf.
Absolutely, absolutely. So last question I want to ask you about, is there anything else you want students to know, either about you or about the department you work in?
I think the most important thing that I would like for students to know about our division is that we're here for you. If there's concerns that you have, thoughts, if there are things that you would like for us to address, don't hesitate to just stop into the office and or shoot us an email. Contact us to let us know what your needs are so we can address them.
Absolutely. Where is your office located for students who may not know?
It is on the second floor of the University Center. If you know where the Bear Pantry is, the exit to the Bear Pantry actually exit into the entryway into my office.
All right, well, perfect. Well, that was all my questions today. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. And thank you all for joining us here at Bear News. I've been Alana Cassiano, and we'll see you next time.